Okay, so we're going to get started. Did you get a packet? There's a booklet right there if you want to follow along. No.
Okay, I'll get it.
Yeah, okay. So the first page, we go over the history. And basically the warranty industry started in the early 70s. And while it seems like it would be some homeowners that wanted to make sure their systems and appliances were covered, it actually started by some real estate agents and brokers who were tired of being sued after they closed on the house. And so before the warranty industry came about, if the buyer closed on the property and they got into the home and something broke, fairly early on, there would be an assumption that maybe the seller or the listing agent knew. And there was a lot of lawsuits that came out of that whole question. So they got together and actually developed the industry out in the California area. And of course, it's widespread now. I believe in Texas, where over 80% of all transactions are covered by a home warranty. And it really is a risk management tool. It seems like it's, it's really good for your clients. Obviously, it helps them with some out-of-pocket expenses on repairs, but it really is a risk management tool for you and your sellers and your buyers. And so in 2009, the Residential Service Company Act was created here in Texas. And basically what they said, if you're going to practice as a home warranty company here in the state, there are a couple of rules that you're going to need to follow by. And these are just a few. We have to have a certain amount of money in financial reserves. We only take a very small portion of that warranty money when it first is collected, and then it is prorated out, so we get a little bit as the year progresses on. But that money is set aside to pay claims should something break and we need to go in and fix something or repair something. There's security requirements, and there's also reporting requirements. And basically, all home warranty companies in the state of Texas on April 1st have to submit to track any policies that were put into place, so the number of policies, the amount of total repairs that we paid out, if there are any lawsuits or complaints against us, that's all reported through TREC. They compile all that information. I'm sure if you've worked with TREC before, you know that can be a little bit slower of a process. So while they get it on April 1st, it's usually you can get access to that information somewhere in mid to late August. We actually just got it. It was a little bit later this year. But it's really good information if you're ever wanting to kind of take a look at where the industry is. I would encourage you to ask TREC for a copy of that list. You can, I think you have to get it in writing, or you can call in and ask them. You can't get it on their website. I've looked and looked, it's not on there. But you can get a copy of it, and it's really interesting. There's about 32 home warranty companies practicing in the state of Texas right now, and it's very similar to real estate. The top 10% are doing 90% of the business. And then there's a lot of smaller ones, and of course there's more and more growing every day with the industry as it's turned around. But right now there's about 32.
Does that list also say the number of complaints they've had?
Yes. Talks about complaints, and typically those are reported to TREC through TREC anyway. That's where you would go to report an issue. But they compile all that information, and it just came out, so if you're interested, I would reach out to TREC and they can get you a list of that. And then there is another association. It's called the National Home Service Contract Association. That's their website, homeservicecontract.org. Really great information to send your clients to look at if they're trying to research home warranties and what they cover and what they don't cover. Not all home warranty companies are a part of that association. I would say now, as a former agent, I personally would make sure that the home warranty company that I was recommending was a part of that association. It's kind of like TAR. They hold us, and NAR, they hold us at a higher level of standard. So there's more money that has to be put in reserve, some printing, things that we are not allowed to do, and mostly what I usually hear are people asking me for a checklist of what's covered and what's not. They want a list of all the home warranty companies side by side and a little checklist going down showing what's covered and what's not covered. And that's something they restrict us from doing because that information changes all the time. Home warranty companies change their coverage every year, and it's no given date. We have to submit it to TREC to get it approved first, but once it's approved, it's out and it's printed. And by the time you print those and you distribute them, they could be possibly out of date. So there are some that are distributed out there, and I've seen them pretty regularly. just make sure that if you have any questions, because I can tell you there are 4 things on there they say we don't cover that we do. And that's been on there for quite a while, so you want to make sure that that information is correct. Any questions on any of that?
My question might be a little bit more for the other agents, but I always struggle when my clients say, well, which one should I take?
Yeah.
Because that's so subjective.
Right.
And so I'll send them several different brochures and say, well, I've heard through word of mouth, and maybe you should get on and research and talk to your friends which ones they like. But how do you guys go about doing that?
I give them several different ones to compare,
Okay.
but I always suggest over the
Okay. Yeah, you know, your clients don't have any clue how the home warranty works, so they're obviously relying on you. I think it's a good idea to just put a few out there for sure. That way, you know, if something does break and they're not, you know, pointing the finger at you, hey, you told me to choose this company and now it's not covered, and you just don't want to get caught up in that. So personally, I think it's a great idea. If they ask you about any relationship you have, then you're always, you know, welcome to say that, but I definitely would make sure that they have, you know, options to choose from. Okay? All right, so we're going to read the definition of a residential service contract, and it seems kind of basic, but we really are going to kind of break it down as we go along. And it is the standard residential service contract is a 1-year contract that protects a resale home buyer or current homeowner against the cost of unexpected repairs or replacement of major systems and appliances that break down due to normal use. Coverage is also available for home sellers during the listing and escrow period to help them keep unforeseen breakdowns from potentially delaying the close of sale. And we're going to talk about seller's coverage a little bit more here in a few minutes. Okay, residential service contracts versus homeowners insurance. There's a very specific line. There are things that they cover that we are not allowed to cover, and things that we cover that they don't cover, and there's no crossing over in that. And actually I get calls on this from time to time, typically newer agents, but just to be clear on some of that stuff. The residential service contracts, we cover all the main systems and appliances: air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electrical system. And then in our standard coverage, and this is pretty typical in the industry, some vary from this, we typically cover the appliances that would typically convey in a sale in the state of Texas. So in Texas, you typically get your oven and your cooktop, your dishwasher, and your microwave. Refrigerator, I know it's becoming a little more common here, but right now it's not just an industry standard. So refrigerator, washer and dryer, those are options that you can add on. And I do have people calling me sometimes confused, thinking we do actually cover the refrigerator, and we do. There is an option, but you would need to add it on.
Would that be true if it was a built-in refrigerator? Would it still be additional coverage?
Yes.
Okay, so it's always additional.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
So refrigerator is never covered
Unless you
without
add
an
it.
additional premium.
Correct, you gotta add it on. Now, in Florida, our coverage, in Florida, the refrigerator always conveys with the home. It's just always does, and we cover refrigerators in our standard coverage. So these plans are really geared towards the typical residential contract in the state that it's applied to, okay? So major systems and appliances, we only cover things that break due to normal wear and use. No cosmetic finishes or secondary damages. I actually get this question quite often, and it usually is related to plumbing. So if there was a plumbing issue in the wall and they had a leak, and your client, you know, closed on the property, and a couple of months go by and they realize there's a leak in the pipe, they call us and we'll dispatch a local technician to come out and do the repair. And he's going to have to obviously cut into the sheetrock to decide where the actual leak is. He'll cut in there, fix the actual plumbing issue, and then they finish the wall to what we call a rough finish. So they'll sheetrock it, tape it, and float it. We don't do cosmetic finishes, so we're not going to match the paint. If there were any secondary damages related to that, so say the water ran down their wall, ruined their sheetrock, their baseboards, ran across their hardwood floors, none of that's going to be covered under the home warranty, and that is an industry standard. That is always going to be a homeowner's insurance claim. So any secondary damages from any of those systems and appliances are always going to be filed under the homeowner's insurance. Okay? And no damages due to pets, people, and pests. So normal wear and use again. So if the client calls and says, hey, my granddaughter was over, I left the dishwasher door open and she jumped up and down on it and broke it off, not going to be covered. We cover it if it breaks due to normal wear and use, but if there's damage done outside of that, it's not going to be covered. okay? Okay, homeowners insurance, acts of nature, fire, hurricane, hail, and lightning. A good example of that gets a little bit confusing is if lightning were to strike the air conditioning unit and it blows it out during a storm. And it actually does happen quite often, probably more, I hear garage door openers, for some reason, they go out quite often during electrical storms. That's gonna be filed under your homeowner's insurance. It's not covered under the home warranty. They cover all acts of nature. They cover personal content, structural and roof damage, and then secondary damage. And actually, we just talked about a little bit of roof leak coverage. We just implemented what we call roof leak coverage. We've had it for, well, I say just, probably a little over a year now. And some home warranty companies offer it. And basically, the premium for us is $100. It's paid up front. If they had a leak, we would come out and patch it. But we would never replace the roof, so it's just to fix the actual leak itself. But that's a fairly new product, so, and then your secondary damages. Any questions?
What about, where do sprinkler systems fall?
We actually have an option that you can add on. It's,
Okay, so that would be an additional
yes.
thing you could add on the
Correct.
refrigerator.
Yep. Ours is, we call it our star service, and it covers the sprinkler system, and it also gives 2 HVAC tune-ups in that year or time. So they'll come out pre-season, so pre-summer, so in the spring, and then fall to check the heating system, and they, basically come out and make sure it's running properly, add Freon if needed, calibrate the thermostats, just make sure everything's working properly for them, and they'll replace the filters if the client has those in place.
So that wouldn't be considered like a $60 or whatever service?
Yes, so they'll pay the trade call fee.
So they
so
would
the star
still have
service
to
is
pay the
yeah.
fee?
Yeah, always pay a trade call fee when the technician comes out. So $50 up front for the service.
Checkups, you'd still pay the fee?
Yes, and then it's our trade call fee is $60 paid
Yeah.
to the technician at the time he comes out. Did you have a question?
Oh, only if you're done with this.
No, go
My
ahead.
question was, when it gets to normal wear and use, at what point do they say, this is worn out? Like it's the useful life is over of this
Yeah.
product, go buy a new one.
Yeah, I mean when they cannot repair it anymore, obviously they're going to replace it with a new unit. But as far as the people and pests, it's usually, again, I kind of was mentioning this before, it takes the technician coming out and kind of getting his eyes on things. You can usually tell if a dog is chewed through a line or a rat chewed through an air duct. That stuff is usually pretty visible. But we always repair it. If we can't repair it, we'll replace it. We don't ever replace it just because it's old. I have a lot of people call me, well, it's 10 years old. Why won't you
But
replace
like
it?
like say my air conditioning unit, it's broken now, or if it's not working, and the guy comes out, he's like, well, it's 25 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He would try to replace it, or he would actually, he would try to repair it, and if he couldn't repair it because it's just so
Yeah.
old, it's the end of its useful life.
Yeah.
The home warranty company would actually replace
Yes,
it. They wouldn't
and-
say, go buy yourself a new one.
Well, and the industry's just changing, and in January 1, the minimum state standards for air conditioning, since you're talking about air conditioning, increased. It went from a 13 SEER to a 14 SEER.
Mm-hmm.
So the chances of us being able to repair a 25-year-old AC unit is probably slim to none anyway. It would be replaced with a brand new unit, and it would be replaced with the minimum state standard, which would be a brand new 14 SEER unit. Those changes have made it to where they're basically trying to do away with Freon, and it's getting really expensive to even add Freon in there, and they keep reducing the production of that product. I think the last I heard they were down 80% of the production, so they're only producing about 20% of that. So as the production lessens, the more the cost goes up, but also the systems, they're really trying to get it towards a more efficient product. So there aren't really a whole lot of modifications you can do to an older AC unit at this point that would get it up to code, and those are things that we have to follow when we're doing an install. So at this point, I would imagine probably a unit that old would probably just be replaced.
But do you only replace a portion of it? Kind of like in the car insurance industry, somebody has a old car and it gets totaled, they're only gonna give him the value of that old car.
No,
They're not gonna
we cover, if
take
you,
his brand new
it depends on what type of coverage, and we're gonna go over coverage in a minute. Depends on what coverage you actually have in place. We cover the cost of the unit and for the technician. But again, it depends on what coverage you go over. So we'll kind of break that down a little bit more in a second, and that way you can understand it, because I always use AC as a rule of thumb because it's the most expensive thing that breaks and is covered by the warranty. But yeah, it would really kind of depend on what coverage you have on the house.
Okay, I'm just thinking of the business model, like anybody with a really old AC that year could get coverage.
Yeah, we
And
don't have a
everybody
limit
gets
on the
different
age of
money.
it, as long as you had an inspection, the technician, I mean, most of the times they'll say it's at its life expectancy. We don't care, if it's working properly, we're gonna cover it. It just has to be working properly. Now, if he says the differentials are way off, or, you know, you need to really have it checked, and we always encourage a licensed HVA tech to come out and do the inspection, because as you may or may not know, those guys do not open the unit, they're just testing the actual air temperature coming out of the registers. And we're gonna talk about pre-existing and known pre-existing, and that's why it's really important, especially if you're dealing with a house that old. You would definitely, I personally would recommend doing the additional, $165 to do a licensed HVA tech, and that way he can open up the system. But we don't have a limit on the age of the product, so no matter how old it is, we'll put the place in plan. It just has to be working properly. Okay? Okay, conditions of coverage. So most residential service contracts require that the covered systems and appliances are located within the main perimeter of the foundation of the home. I get a lot, and I actually was working with an agent here in the office. I've been trying to work with our company in creating I would love to see a package created for these outdoor kitchens. They've become more and more popular, but just FYI, home warranties do not cover appliances and systems that are located outside the home. So and they're really, they can get pretty extensive. Some of these kitchens have dishwashers and refrigerators and, I mean, the whole shebang out there. If it's not located inside the house, it's not gonna be covered under the home warranty.
Okay, I think you just answered it, but I was gonna say, if the slab was poured for the
Yeah.
outdoor kitchen, no. If it's outside the walls,
Correct.
okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Now, we do and secondary refrigerator packages, so if you were to take out a refrigerator package and you wanted the kitchen refrigerator covered, for us it's $50, and this does vary between home warranty companies, so I would definitely check. If you were to pick up an additional refrigerator package, for us you get, I believe it's another $50, and you get 4 more units covered, and if the unit was in the garage, it would be covered. But that first refrigerator package is always gonna cover the refrigerator in the kitchen. But it also, that additional 4 package includes ice makers, wine chillers, and a lot of people have multiple refrigerators and freezers around their house. So I would definitely make sure you add on that package if you want more than that kitchen refrigerator, but it does have to be located within the main foundation.
Can you buy an extra for the grill? No?
No, nobody covers outdoor yet. I personally would like to see it. It's become popular. I mean, we're in kind of a state where it's
Well,
hot
and
and
you
people
have-
use them a lot.
Yes, and
It can be outside.
they're not barbecue pits, they're like
Yeah.
$2,000
Oh, yeah.
grills.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't found one that covers them yet unless somebody just recently picked it up. I've done research before, but I can't find them anywhere.
Okay.
Okay, so it has to be located within the perimeter of the main foundation. It has to be correctly installed and working properly on the closing date, and it became inoperable due to normal wear use. Any questions on that? I think we kind of touched on those already. Every home deserves a home warranty. Properties that are covered under the home warranty plan: residential resale, single family homes, condominiums. I just had a question about condominiums, and what I told her is that condominium coverage, at least with us, is the same price as the regular single family home, because we're still covering the same exact systems and appliances. The square footage might be smaller, but still air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electrical, all that systems are still the same, so it does cost the same. The only thing I did tell her was that it's really important that if the AC unit is located in a hard to reach area, so say it's on the roof, you want to make sure you upgrade, because in standard coverage, cranes are not included, and when you upgrade to ultimate or platinum, there are cranes included, and cranes can be very expensive. So if we had to go and replace that older unit that was on a roof, it can get very costly and cause your clients to have some out-of-pocket expenses. So Whenever you're working with condos or you see any awkward place, it's more common probably on the West Coast. People live on cliffs and they have their AC units placed in all these awkward places. If you ever see anything like that, make sure you consider that coverage as well. Condominiums, we cover multi-units, duplex, triplex, and fourplexes. There's a little bit of a break. It's not the same price as just the single family. Manufactured homes, not very many home warranty companies are covering those anymore. Make sure that if you're writing a warranty in that they do cover it. We actually cover it, and it's the same exact product as our single family home. Townhomes, lease option rentals, REOs, foreclosures and short sales, guest homes and in-law units, and new construction. The in-law guest homes, this does vary again in the industry, so make sure you're looking at the brochures. For us, if the outside unit, so say it's a garage apartment, is less than 1,000 square feet, and it's tied into the main systems of the main home, it would fall under our regular coverage. If it has its own systems and appliances, or it's more than 1,000 square feet, you would need to add coverage to that particular unit as well. Okay, and you can always call the pricing on that, but that does vary from company to company.
So a casita, some of these
Casitas,
would be, it's the square footage of it would be.
if it's under 1,000 square feet. So with all home warranties, pricing increases after 5,000 square feet. So single family homes, everything from 0 to 5,000 square feet is what you see in the brochure. If you go above that 5,000 square feet, and it has to be below 10,000, we don't cover homes over 10,000 square feet, the pricing does increase. So say the house was 4,500 square foot, and then the in-law suite was, it puts that over the 5,000 limit, then you're gonna get an increase there. But if the house is under 5,000 square foot, and including that unit, and it's less than 1,000 square feet, it's still covered under our warranty. And it has to be using the same systems as the main home. So tied into the air conditioning and heating and stuff. Okay. Yes.
Do a lot of the new home builders just contract out with you guys? I mean,
Well, more commonly, most home builders use a product, it's a 210 product, so they cover a structural, they usually cover, the first 2 years they'll cover the main systems and appliances, and then up to 10 years they'll cover the structural items, so foundation and stuff. Our new home product, and I believe pretty much everybody has a new home product, it's really kind of neat. It is a 4-year plan. So since the builder typically covers the first 2 years, you have to set it up before they actually take possession of the home. So at closing, you'd set it up. They can have it kick in at the 2nd year and go through the 5th year. So they'll have continuous coverage throughout those 5 years. Or they can have it set up at the very first, I've heard people have nightmare stories with new construction. You never know, but most of the times they will pick that second package up. So it's either years 1 through 4 or years 2 through 5. And you can specify that when you set up the warranty. They'll ask you which one you want. So good coverage there, and it's a lot cheaper. Like for us, it's $695 for all 4 years. I mean, you can't beat that. That's almost what 1 year costs in a regular home. I mean, obviously it's a newer home, so probably less likely things to happen, but things do happen, and we do have a lot of clients picking that up, agents picking it up for their clients, or we do have a lot of buyers pick that up.
otherwise a buyer can get into the home, and when their new home warranty runs out in a couple of years, they can just call you and do the regular
1 year.
annual.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Let's see. What residential service contracts cover? So in standard coverage, we talked a little bit about this on the air conditioning a few minutes ago, and it's really important because of the changes that just happened. We always cover the main systems and appliances. Some of the enhancements, and this is where the home warranty companies differ, because we always cover the air conditioning, heating. The enhancements are the parts that change the product very, very much. You want to make sure any home warranty company that you're recommending is covering the new 13 SEER R410 modification. So as an example of what you were saying on that 25-year-old AC unit, in standard coverage, we're always going to cover the cost to replace the unit and for the technician to come out and do the replacement. What's not covered in standard coverage and what you get when you upgrade to different plans is money to make modifications to the house to do the install. So typically these homes are way out of code. A good example on an air conditioning unit, the units outside, especially if it's an older 10-SEER or less, and a unit, a house that old, I would imagine, unless they've replaced it, it's gonna be pretty old. They'll have to get, if they get out there, the units are so much bigger, they may have to extend the slab outside. If they're replacing a unit in the attic, they're gonna have to add extra bracing in the attic. They're much heavier. They're vented out the roof differently. They're gonna have to make modifications to the roof. The electrical system is tied in differently. So standard coverage and with us is there's no money set aside to make those modifications. So this is really a good package for a home that's less than a couple of years old, that if something needed to replace, it would just be a swap out. I always tell people if it's more than, really right now with the recent changes in April, actually January and in April, I tell people that, I would at least get the ultimate if it's more than 3 years old. And if it's more than 5 or 6 years old, platinum coverage really is gonna save them quite a bit of money. No money in standard. In our ultimate protection, there's $250, and then in the platinum coverage, there's $1,000 to make those modifications. And a 25-year-old AC unit, they're gonna need every bit of that $1,000 to do that. So it's really important that they're aware, hey, Mr. Seller's only paying standard coverage, just understand that there could be some out-of-pocket expenses here. You're welcome to upgrade. They can pay the difference and upgrade the plan. But at least they're aware if something were to break and now we call, we come out with a $5,000 AC unit. They're not upset calling in because we didn't cover $1,000 of that. And that's usually what happens. They just completely don't know why it's not covered. So it really depends on what coverage you get on. $1,000 in our platinum. Typically, most home warranties companies cover up to $250. There are a few that go up to $5. So make sure you're reading that information when you're passing out the brochures, especially if the home is a little bit older.
Are you running into that all the time now with the new water heaters because they're shaped differently?
Well, they're about 6 inches in diameter larger and they're a little bit taller. So April 16th, those more efficient water heaters, that mandate was put out, and so what we're seeing now are the techs, if it's in the attic, it doesn't fit through the staircase now. They have to take that whole staircase and framing out to get it up there. If it's in the garage, it's usually in some little alcove. These things are taller, so they don't usually fit in there. And then also they don't have pilot lights anymore. They have what's called a glow plug. So if there's not an electrical outlet near the water heater, which typically there isn't, an electrician's gonna have to come in and run an electrical power outlet to the unit to get the system up and running. So those are the type of modifications that they'll run into when replacements have to happen, and that's why it's really important you make sure you get that extra coverage on there. Okay. Undetectable pre-existing conditions, failure due to lack of maintenance, and failure due to rust, sediment, and corrosion. I personally would make sure that any home warranty company I was working with has this in their standard coverage. And I will tell you, you have to upgrade with several to get that. It's just a basic thing. When I was an agent back, in 2004 and 5 and 6, the minimum state standards went up for air conditioning back then. And it was a big deal. There was only one home warranty company out there that was covering those modifications. And I'd been using one company religiously, but I quickly switched, and most everybody in the industry did at that time. And then also, it used to be a big denial for lack of maintenance. So a technician gets out there and says, well, you haven't been changing your filters out, so not covered. They can call lack of maintenance on anything, so you really want to make sure those items are covered in the basic coverage. If not, be sure that you upgrade them to the right coverage. Okay. Optional. So these are some of the add-ons that you can actually purchase, and they are, ordered at the time of the warranty setup. It can be added with us. You have up to 60 days after they close to add or change coverage. So make sure they're aware of the options, and if they, decide they want to change it and you're using us, feel free to give them my cell phone number. Swimming pools and spas, limited roof leak repair. We talked a little bit about that. If it's in a more rural area, you want to consider septic or well pump. And then washer, dryer, refrigerators. There's some other things, like I mentioned, start service, which is the 2 HVAC tune-ups, and it also includes the sprinkler system. We have fountains, we have water softeners, there's some other things on there that you can definitely add on. And then probably the most important one is swimming pools. We have our basic package covers the pool and spa, so the pump, the filtration system, and all that stuff that goes in with the swimming pool. But if it's a saltwater pool, you'll need to add the additional saltwater pool package. And some, I believe, the majority of the warranty companies out there, that's an option that you have to add on. So we cover the main system on the pool if it's chlorinated. If you have a saltwater pool, there's a cell and a saltwater circuit board that go out quite often. We're seeing on average anywhere between 4 and 6 years, and they're really expensive to replace. So you'll need to add that coverage on to cover that saltwater cell and that circuit board. They can take out the regular coverage for the chlorinated pool, but that cell and that circuit board won't be covered. It's not real cheap to add it, but most people that have saltwater pool understand the value in it, and they'll pick it up. Okay. Additional items and services coverage upgrades. So these are things that you upgrade to when you go up in level in plans. Improper installations, mismatched systems. Those two alone, if you're not sure how much work has been done on a house, and you really kind of never know, do you? I mean, anybody could have gone in there and slapped a part on it, might be working at closing, might be working for an inspection. But, if we get out there, especially if you didn't have a licensed HVAC tech come out and do an inspection on the AC unit, and he opens it up and sees some random part taped on there, and got it through closing. Actually, what I see more often, and this happens quite often, and I get calls from agents pretty regularly in the summer, is, and I'll just give you an example. This summer I had an agent call me. They closed on the property. She was representing the buyer. 3 days later, the AC went out. They dug around, found some receipts from some work that the previous homeowners had done on the house. So they found a receipt for an HVAC company. Called the tech, and he said, yeah, I was out there 2 days before they closed and pumped it full of Freon, and it got it cooled, and it looked like it was working properly, but it was not covered under the warranty because it has to be working. And it was very obvious when the tech got out there that the coils needed replaced and had probably needed replaced a long time before. So, those things are really important that you really investigate. And I always tell people that probably more importantly, because like I mentioned earlier, you have your inspections, there could be weeks in between an inspection and you closing, and since it has to work on the day of the plan going into effect, which is when you close, you really want to make sure you do a good walkthrough and turn everything off and on, make sure it's working properly. Obviously you're not going to take the whole AC unit apart, but run it when you're in there. Turn the oven on, just turn the lights off and on, because it does happen often. We get calls all the time. They're in their day one, or they get back from closing and it's not working. So it's really important that you make sure you do a thorough walkthrough. Another thing that you get when you upgrade in plans, the code upgrades and permits. We cover hallways and cranes, refrigerant recapture, and then seller's coverage. Does anybody in here use seller's coverage? I know Frank does.
Standard procedure.
Standard. No? Okay, well let me tell you
I
a
want to
little
learn
bit.
more about it.
Yeah,
That's fine.
it's a really good product, and it is a little bit tricky in the industry that we're in right now, but seller's coverage is set up typically, and we like to tell people to set up as soon as you take the listing. We only cover things that break during the life of the plan, so it has to be working when the seller's coverage goes in place. It's $65 paid at closing, so we'll collect that at closing. Obviously, you need to let us know where you're closing at so we can send an invoice over and collect it from your homeowners. But it covers them through the listing period, so it stays on there for 180 days. If the house hasn't sold, it'll automatically drop off. You can up it and put it on again. We're not going to collect, I said 65, it's actually 75. We won't collect an additional $75 to re-up it, but we just put it on there because a lot of times people close and they forget to tell us that it closed. So it's usually gone, and it's, we take it out of our system. So it'll stay on there for 180 days. And then we'll, charge the client, your seller, at closing the $75. So it covers all the same things, the main systems and appliances. There are some limitations with it. It is only a $75 plan. So we only go up to $1,500 on air conditioning. So if the AC were to go out, anything above that $1,500 would be the seller's responsibility. It has to break during the life of the plan, and that's where it really is tricky because the market has been moving so swiftly. When I was an agent, I used it all the time. Average days on market was, it could be easily 3 months. Well, now you put it on the market today. If you got a contract tomorrow and you went through inspections 3 days later and you set up seller's coverage, there's a 3-day window that after the inspector comes out and looks at something, he's going to have to determine, hey, did this fall within the life of the plan? That's why it's really, really important that you put it on as soon as you possibly can, while you have some time in between inspections. And, things do break. You want to make sure that your clients are covered and not having to fork out money for repairs while they're actively on the market. But it has to be active on the market, and then we collect the $75 at closing. Our goal really is to capture the buyer. That's why we offer that. But I will tell you that it's not a profitable option for us in Texas, because in Texas, and we're going to talk about the rest of in a few minutes, the buyer chooses a home warranty. So even if your seller picks up our seller's coverage, the buyer decides to go somewhere else, we just cancel the plan and we still collect the $75, but we usually pay out quite a bit in seller's coverage. In every other state, if you take out seller's coverage, your seller's going to buy the buyer plan for the buyer. And the buyer's okay with it because they just want a warranty. But in Texas, we let the buyer choose. So, I always tell people, if we've gone out and done repairs and helped get the transaction closed, make sure you let the buyer's agent know that there was seller's coverage in place. A lot of times they aren't even aware that we've been out there and done repairs. That way, they may consider using the same coverage that had the home warranty. And then also, it could prevent some pre-existing issues. So if they get in there the first day, but they had seller's coverage on there for 3 months, the chances of the pre-existing issues coming up are going to be less likely. So it is to their benefit as well to stay with seller's coverage.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
One, with the sellers, if they need you to come out, is it the same service fee?
Same trade call fee, $60. They pay to the technician when he comes out.
And then is there any benefit to the buyer financially, or to the seller providing the first year warranty to the buyer if they stick with your same, is there some kind of wrap
No.
if they stick with the same company?
No, they pay for the seller's coverage and then they pay for the plan itself.
It's just completely
The seller's
separate.
coverage ends at closing, and then the buyer package would pick up from there on for 1 year. Yes.
And so how long is the average time for a service technician to get there?
Well, it really depends on what time of the year you're talking and where the property's located, and there's a lot of different factors. We actually cut out some more rural areas this past year because we can't get technicians out there. They're coming from Houston and going out to these really tiny rural areas.
Around in the Woodlands.
Around here, if you're in the Woodlands, it really kind of depends on the time of the year. So we have, our company's been in the business for 42 years. We have a very well-established network of contractors. So that is one very important factor that you want to consider when you're picking a home warranty company. But in the summer is usually where there could be issues. So air conditionings, I'll just tell you, I started with this company in February, and it was nice and cool. I thought, oh, this is a great job, so easy. And then about May, when people start cranking on their air conditioners, the heat is horribly hard on all the systems in your house. Things start breaking left and right. My phone blows up from about May until really I just kind of started getting a break here in late August and September. Really is usually when it kind of slows down. So given that, it's air conditioning issues where people call and say, oh my gosh, there's a problem. The technician, is not going to be able to come out for 3 days. And what I tell people is, and it really is important for you to know how that works for us. When your client calls in, they're calling in for air conditioning issue, example, we dispatch on a rotational pool. So the next person up in line is going to get dispatched that's in that area. If that was late on Monday, and Tuesday morning he calls and says, hey, I can't make it out there for 3 days. I just picked up 5 clients, because they're independently owned. They run their own schedule. They could have picked up 10 clients on their own. We aren't aware of that. We tell them to keep us in a loop, but they don't always do that. So it's not really a problem. They just need to pick up the phone and call back in and say, hey, this tech, usually the technician will do it, but if I was a homeowner, I would initiate the phone call and say the tech's not able to come out for 3 days, and then they will call around to find one that can come out quicker. Something that we do offer, and it's not everybody does, so definitely check. We can authorize out-of-network contractors, so if your Uncle Bob owns an air conditioning company and he can get out there in an hour, you need to have it authorized first, so you can call in and say, hey, AC's broke, this contractor can come out, quick, can I get this authorized? So what'll happen is when the tech comes out, we'll get on the phone with them and explain coverage, so that he's aware, hey, we wouldn't have ripped out that whole system, now your homeowner is stuck paying for a whole system, if it only needs a repair. So we explain coverage to him, we let the homeowner know how coverage will be applied, so if there's any out-of-pocket expenses, and then they can authorize that over the phone and reimburse them. But that has to be done. So we try to, obviously it depends on what it is. If it's an emergency, it's their only air conditioning system in the entire house, that's an emergency, and that is addressed quickly. They do it. We have a 24/7 phone line that you can call in to set up service, and we dispatch as quickly as possible. If sometimes we got houses with 4 or 5 units in there. Obviously, it's not going to be, if it's an upstairs unit, it's not going to be
I was
a
thinking
priority.
really about the seller's coverage, because I just closed one on Friday, and when we had it inspected, I don't know, a few weeks ago, everything was working perfect. And when they go for the final walkthrough, the day before, the garbage disposal's not working. So it was working when they inspected. It was vacant, and so they go over there, and so the seller says, "Oh, I'll get my Allen key. I can go over there and fix it." And it's just a lady. She's pretty savvy. Anyway, she goes over there and she goes, "I can't fix it. It's dead. Give me the name of a plumber." I was gonna, okay, we're within less than 24 hours of closing. So she's get a plumber to come over and puts her in a new garbage disposal for about $350. So I was thinking about if she had had seller's coverage, it would have cost her $75 plus
60.
the 60.
Correct.
But they would not have been able to come out within
Well, we still
hours.
cover it, and that actually happens.
No,
I
but
had
they
some-
had to, they're not gonna close unless.
Well, yeah, I
garbage
understand.
disposal's
Yeah.
working, and you.
Yeah.
And
So I just
I'm
had an
sure they're not
agent
gonna-
in here with an AC. They did a
Colorado.
walkthrough and the AC wasn't working. And she called me and I said, hey, it's going to be quicker for you to get your own technician out, which she did. And obviously most agents have connections with somebody that they can call quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And we still cover it. Obviously you're going to have to work in some type of agreement with the buyer. If they close or not, I don't know. That's not anything we can.
Yeah, I'm
Have
just
to
saying,
part
when
up,
you get, because
but yeah.
usually on a sale, you're not gonna know that it all of a sudden died. Until
Right.
all that final walkthrough is many times minutes before.
Yeah, but it would be covered, if it would have been covered in the plan,
Yeah.
if your buyer decides to close,
You would
if it
have-
was covered during the plan,
So, okay.
it broke during the plan, we would still send somebody out.
Okay.
Okay? Any more questions about seller's coverage? Nope, alright. Let's move on. Okay, this is just kind of funny. Don't worry about a thing. Your residential service contract will cover anything that breaks. And I really don't think it's intentionally done that way, and maybe not even said that way. Usually what they hear is if anything breaks, make sure you call the home warranty company. And in their minds, anything is covered. So be sure that you set, the tone of the warranty for them. I had some agents that emailed the brochure to their clients and put in big bold letters, they do not cover everything. Feel free to call the account executive. Let them explain it to you. For me, I would rather talk to every client you have up front so that they're not set 6 months down the road when they weren't aware of the type of coverages. A lot of people take out standard coverage and they expect, it's kind of like automobile insurance. You can't get full coverage or get liability, just call them liability and expect full coverage. It's better for them to be aware up front. Then we talked about seller's coverage already. And there are actually, I think this just changed. There were a couple home warranty companies out there that said they offer free seller's coverage, but if you read their coverage, they actually didn't cover the air conditioner. You had to pay the same amount that we charge for our seller's coverage to add the air conditioning. So that might be a pretty good package in other areas that don't require AC, but here in Texas, you want to make sure that the AC is covered in seller's coverage. Yes.
Okay, so I heard you explain the limit on the AC, and I see that there.
Mm-hmm.
that last one, $500 plan limit?
Yeah,
What
so those companies that say they have free coverage,
Oh.
these are some things you wanna look for. Some of them have a weight, some of them have a 500 limit per plan. And they're actually, you know, there are some out there that if they don't go with the same home warranty company, they can charge them any amount above what the policy would have covered, charge them back for the amount they paid in repairs to the home. So you really need to make sure you read it, especially, as you know, if it says it's free, I always want to make sure I read it thoroughly because nothing really is free, right? It's picked up somewhere.
Are there any other limits on what the seller would get as compared to the standard coverage?
It's only standard coverage, that you can't add options, swimming pools, you can't upgrade to platinum, so none of those. It's just standard coverage. There's a $1,500 limit on AC, and then it has to break. So we do in our regular coverage, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, we do cover undetectable pre-existing condition for buyers, but not for sellers. So it has to break during the life of the plan for your seller.
Gotcha, okay.
It's good coverage. Okay, coverage periods. Okay, so we talked about seller's coverage is 180 days. The buyer's coverage goes for an entire year from the day of close. They will get a renewal notice in the mail. I believe we send out two, and they have the option to renew at that point. They have 60 days to add or change coverage after they close, and then home warranties are transferable, and you definitely want to check on how each company does this. But for us, if you take a listing and they already have a home warranty in place with us, if the buyer decides to go with us, so say they just renewed and they are 1 month into that plan, we can transfer the remaining 11 months over to the new buyer, and then at closing, the seller can pay 1 month to give your buyer a full year if they agreed for a full year. Sometimes they just say, I'm just gonna give you the rest of what's on there, but most of the time they offer a full year, so we'll just collect an additional month at closing. If the buyer decides to not go with us, because again in Texas the buyer chooses, then they can get a prorated refund. You'll just need to, they always have to send something in writing. We cannot ever remove coverage without getting it in writing. So typically the agent will have their client email me and say, hey, closed, buyer went with a different company, can I get a refund? And we can send that in. So make sure they don't waste
That
your,
happened before.
yeah.
So the warranty is good for 1 year, if they paid $475, but then they can renew it year after year after year
Correct.
for $475 each year?
Now, wait, not for, well, that's something I think it's on my highlights on one of these, but they do increase after the first year. All home warranty companies go up. Now, they don't increase year after year, but basically the way they look at it is they're offering it at a discounted rate initially because it's going through inspections. Yeah, and there was an agent involved, so we feel like they probably explained coverage to them. But at renewal, it does go up, and it really varies from company to company. We're kind of average in there, but it does go up. So, you know, just FYI, when your clients get their renewal notice and they call you, oh my gosh, you know, it does definitely go up. Okay, limits of liability. Malfunctions not caused by normal wear and use, lack of routine maintenance. We talked about, I think, all of these missing components, secondary damages, pets, people, and pests, lightning, mud, earthquake, fire, flood, freezing storms, and acts of nature. We talked about that.
One of the kinds of things that they say there is no regular maintenance here, just besides seeing it
Lack of
filthy,
maintenance.
yeah.
It really takes a technician to look at it, but it was a very common denial reason. And again, a lot of us cover it in our standard coverage now, but there are some really big companies out there that still do not cover it. So make sure you're reading that, and if it's not in standard, you're upgrading your people, because they can literally come out and say, yeah, I mean, as simple as you didn't change your filters out, or, you know, they're dirty. Well, your filters may get dirtier than my filters in a week, you know, depending on where you live.
It's not required that they show, hey, look, here's my receipts from every 6 months of the.
You know, we cover lack of maintenance, so I don't know how other companies that don't do, but it would be covered anyway under our plan. So I'm not sure how that would work. And this is just kind of a funny, you know, obviously these are visually not working properly and not going to be covered under the warranty. But undetectable versus pre-existing conditions. So basically what we consider undetectable is something that was not visually detected But basically by turning it off and on and doing a visual and a mechanical test to the unit. So the trickiest part again is the AC unit. That's just something that you're not gonna be able to visually look at, but it is the most expensive thing in the home, so that's why we always say, make sure you get a licensed tech. You're obviously not gonna rip the sheetrock off the walls and look at all the plumbing, but usually a tech can get out there and say, hey, there's water damage. It's just, obviously, it's been going on for a very long time. There's wood rot and, they can typically tell how long it's taken. If they feel like it just broke, things do break, that could happen really early in the life plan. If it looks like it just broke, then it would still be covered. Questions regarding the process. You can always call and set up a warranty on the web. A lot of agents email or text me. That changed, service request. Okay, service request. So you can set it up online. Most people don't want to go online to set up a service request. They want to talk to somebody to make sure somebody's coming out right away. But you can set it up on the web, and then we will reach out to them and help them. When they're setting up the service, we let them know, this is the company that we're dispatching. We give you the phone number. We tell them to let them get a little while so that they actually get, they're aware that we've dispatched them out. They may want to wait a couple hours, but it's okay if they initiate the call. But we try, the techs are supposed to reach out quickly. Some of these companies, as you know, are not just big, large companies, so they may be up in the AC, in an attic somewhere. And then, you just want to make sure that you give them a little bit of time to get that dispatch. And then again, they'll pay the trade call fee to the tech. Something that, also with the trade call fee, it's per trade. So say they had 2 plumbing leaks, one upstairs in the sink and the downstairs master bath. That's one technician, one trade, so that it would be one trade call fee. If you had a plumbing leak and an electrical leak and they were both dispatched out, that's 2 different trades, that would be 2 different trade calls, okay? We honor that trade call fee for 30 days, so if the tech is got to go out and come back and get parts, or goes away for a week and the same thing happens again and they've got to come back out, they're not going to pay the trade call fee again. It's good for 30 days. If it's a little bit outside of that, time frame, make sure you call me if you're confident it was related to the same thing. I can definitely reach out to my support team and see if I can help them out with that. But that usually goes again for 30 days. Applications can be set up on the web, online. Again, a lot of people text me or email me, however it works best for you. Some agents, especially in this area, it's very common for the title company to set it up. And I'm sure most of y'all, that's just a routine. But not all areas are like that. I cover the Bryan College Station area, and they just are floored when I tell them title companies set up warranties out here.
Really?
Oh yeah. And there actually are some title companies out here that have steered away from that. And really, since I was an agent and I worked in title, I'll tell you that the title companies are really doing it because they need to get an invoice so they can work up their HUD. Now, that's all changed since they're not doing HUD 1s anymore. But typically, they were waiting to get that invoice so they knew exactly the amount they had in a paper or how much to collect from the seller. That's on the contract, but they have to get the invoice from us. So we always tell agents, especially I do new agent training at HAR, I tell those new agents all the time, just get into the habit of setting it up yourself. It literally takes a few minutes to do it online. That's how the title company does it. But that way you eliminate any confusion, because there are times when it's not set up with the right coverage your client wanted, or it wasn't set up at all. That's happened before. And, mistakes happen, but you are talking to your client, so you best know what they want and need. And it really is better for you to do it if you can get into the habit. But I know out here, it's really just adding another level of service that the title companies can offer, because it's so competitive, and they do offer that. But whichever way you do it, make sure that you look at the invoice when you get it, because when the warranty's set up, you'll get a copy of the contract sent over, and then title company will get a copy of the invoice. So look it over, make sure it's right, so that there's no confusion down the road. Disclosure notice. Do y'all use the disclosure notice here in your office? You do? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good. Not all offices do. And the most important part of the thing about this disclosure notice is highlighted, and it's actually bolded. It says that the buyer, you may choose any company. The purchase of a residential service contract is optional. And then the choice of the residential service company and the extent of coverage lies with the buyer. Neither the broker nor salesperson may condition the sale of a property on the buyer's purchase of a residential service contract. And then there's a couple of check marks on here asking if you received compensation from the warranty company, if you had a relationship with them. We're gonna talk a little bit about that when we get into the RESPA here in just a minute. Don't misrepresent. Don't worry about the leaks in the AC coils. The seller's giving you a home warranty contract. We'll just fill it with Freon, and when the Freon leaks out, call the residential service company, and they'll probably replace the entire system. It's very sad, but I get those calls a lot. I have new agents call me and say, well, they found this on the report, and the listing agent said, don't worry about it, that's why we got a warranty. It's just setting up. It's a bad setup, and it's terrible, and I get those calls all the time, because the homeowners aren't even aware. The buyers feel like it's gonna be covered, and they're so disappointed. And it really, you know, just for future referrals and just do the right thing. Most people, I think, especially out here, do the right thing, but sadly, it does happen, and I get those calls, and it's just unfortunate. Okay, truck disclosure relationship. It's buyer's choice, no condition requirements, facts only. So if you were to put something in special provision or agent remarks, you can say there's an actual warranty in place. So especially if you have seller's coverage and you want to make sure the other agent knows, you can state a fact. There is a residential warranty, or you can even say the company. They currently have Old Republic Home Protection on the house. You just can't condition the warranty in the sale of the house on the warranty. You want to make sure that you include the form, and then the NAR Code of Ethics. Obviously, you're representing your clients, and they're completely dependent on you, so you want to make sure that you disclose to them that they have an option of warranty, and that they can choose whatever company they want. But it just talks about risk management and how you're supposed to advise your clients that it's there, because you don't want somebody to come back and say, well, you never told me that I could get a home warranty. I personally would make sure that if I was recommending a warranty and my clients decided not to go with it, that I would have them sign off on that. And I believe all of us cover this now, but in the inside flap of our brochure, you're sitting at closing, you can grab one of these from the title company, and there's a little acknowledgement down there, and they can check whether they decided to choose it or declined the warranty. And this might be something you want to keep in your file in case they decide that they don't want it. You don't want them to come back later and say AC broke and you never told me about the warranty. The only thing really on the contract is the price. Make sure that you're getting the correct information and the pricing on that. I have clients call me on the road all the time. Hey, I'm writing a contract. How much is salt water? I need this and that. You just want to make sure it's right. It's sad, but unfortunately, people do call me at closing and go, I didn't know that it increased after 5,000 square foot, or I put the wrong price in there, and usually it's the agent that eats the cost for their clients. So just be sure that you do a little bit of research when you're writing that number in. And for me, you can call me anytime, and I'm sure most of the account executives in the area will take that call for you. Yeah.
Dawn, I never know how much additional coverage the buyers are gonna want or add-on coverage, and so I just explain it as we're asking the seller to make a contribution of this amount toward your home warranty coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And that way it leaves it open
Right.
that the price could go up and that they'll be coming out of pocket.
Right. And you know what? The market's competitive. I have a lot of people that were even afraid to ask, and they would just pay for the warranty at closing, which is an option they can. A lot of people just want to put the minimum on there. They want their offer to go through. So, a lot of times people will do that, and that's fine. Just make sure you tell them, hey, you may want to upgrade. The home is 40 years old, These are some options that you can have, but they could just pay the difference at close. And a lot of times the title company will take the check, the difference, and mail it with the seller's proceeds when the warranty's set up, or they can just drop a check in the mail and pay the difference. And then that's that little form that I told you that's inside of the brochure. I've had agents tell me they've had to pull that out before because they had somebody call them and say that something broke and they didn't, they said that they didn't recommend the warranty, and they actually had this in their file, so it does work. Okay, choosing the warranty company. So these are some things you really want to look at. Financial strength. You obviously want to make sure, and I'm sure that, I know that y'all have been in the market since the market turned, and you saw companies coming and going. It's really important that there is some financial backing there. Experience is huge, obviously, like I said, you wanna make sure they have a good network of contractors that they can dispatch. Reputation, look on the Better Business Bureau. There are a lot of websites out there right now, I don't trust any of them. There's some, my company's even was approached on, you have to actually pay to increase your rating. So, our company's the third largest home warranty company in the nation. If you go on a website and you see, this smaller company that just started up that do in, we do in one day what they do an entire year, and you only see a couple of complaints, and then you see all these complaints, for the larger companies. That's why we always tell everybody the Better Business Bureau is the place you wanna go, because they do rate and they take that into consideration. I also would make sure they were a part of that association. The service request and follow-up process, you wanna look at that. We talked about out-of-network, contractors, make sure that that's an option for your clients. Coverage choices, and then price really should be the last thing, because these are the things, our pricing, all of us are really fairly close. For $10, you could be getting an additional $1,000 in, coverage, where it looks like theirs is only $10 cheaper. You wanna make sure you know what's in the coverage, and the pricing should be the last thing that you look at on that. Okay, HUD and interpretive ruling, we are just about done here. So, the Real Estate Settlement Procedure Act, and I gave you all a copy of the HUD ruling there. You should have it, should be the last one. And on June 25th, 2010, Section 8 of the RESPA rules here, if you look on, we're gonna go down to, this is the interpretive rule for home warranties. Okay, so the third column, all the way down, you'll see the interpretive rule. If you go under A, it says unlawful compensation. So before this came into place, and actually when I was an agent, title companies were doing everything for their buyers and their sellers and their agents. They would take food to the house. If I had an open house, all I had to do was call the title company. They would make the flyers. They would create just listed postcards and mail them to everybody in the neighborhood. And it really got out of control. And home warranty companies kind of were left in limbo and not really addressed until this interpretive rule. And basically what it says is RESPA does not prohibit a real estate broker or agent from referring business to a home warranty company. Rather, RESPA prohibits a real estate agent or broker from receiving a fee, such as a referral, as a referral is not a compensable service. And before this rule came out, there were quite a few home warranty companies out there that would pay a referral for every warranty that was sent in. They would pay it towards your office bill. There were a lot of different ways they would do it. I believe the average was like $50 is what they would pay per warranty. And then this interpretive rule came out. If you go on the second page where it says bona fide compensation for services performed, it's in the middle column about halfway down. It says Section 8C of RESPA and HUD's regulations allow payment of a bona fide compensation for services actually performed. And then you go down a little bit further, this all sounds kind of tricky, I'll explain to you though. Only if the services are actually necessary and distinct from the primary services provided by the real estate broker or agent. And it has to be normal, for which there is no duplicative charge. So basically what they're saying is if the agent does some work for you, actually does a task, then you can pay them for their service. You can't just pay for a referral because they sent you. So what some home warranty companies, and there's one in particular that I know still does it, is it really kind of is a gray area. It's not illegal to do it, so if you do it, it's okay. You just want to make sure you're documenting everything. But what they've done is they were doing this regularly, and they didn't want to lose the business of the agents that they were paying these referrals out to. So they said, okay, we can still compensate you for services that you provided for us. Bring us a list of all the serial codes for the appliances in the house, and then we'll pay you the $50 for providing a service to us. If you're doing that, you want to make sure that you keep documentation that you sent that information to them, and that you also you sign off on it on this form, because it's just like every other RESPA rule violation. It's $10,000 per violation for the agent and for the home warranty company. So it's really important that you document that information and keep track of it. This is addressed often, and it seems like it, every once in a while I feel like it's going to change, but right now that's the rule behind it. So make sure that if you're doing that, do y'all do any of that in here? Any referrals?
Some agents do.
Some do, yeah. There are some that still do it, and it's been, you know, when I was in title when it really was implemented, and it was really a mess because we'd have agents like arguing over who actually referred the warranty to the client because they wanted to, you know, and $50 a warranty, I guess, can add up, especially if you're doing a lot of business. But really, you should be recommending the warranty company for the product they provide for your clients and the service that they can provide for your clients, not because of $50. So that's why they basically implemented that. And then those are the reasons that your clients benefit. For the seller, it can help the seller sell faster. If you do use seller's coverage, use a sign writer. It says that the house is covered under a warranty. You know, buyers don't always understand that, know that, and it really does, you know, set off a light in our head if they're looking at two properties across the street. Oh, this is, you know, has a warranty. I mean, you know, it provides a little bit of relief for them once they get in the house. And for the buyer, it's peace of mind, budget protection, and convenience. And then for the real estate agent, it can help you generate future referrals. It can help sell the home faster, and then it can decrease after sale disputes. Any questions on any of that? I do this as a 3-hour class too, so I feel like when I do one, I'm just like spitting it out fast. Do y'all have any questions? No? Well, that was way too easy. I was that thorough, huh?
You're good.
Very good.
Well, good. Well, thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. If I can ever do anything for you, please don't hesitate to call. I put my cards there. Did everybody sign in? Yes, you're